Well, it looks like we've got another round of protests going on in Hong Kong. There was, for quite some time since last March, a sustained level of protest that was going on a regular basis there. And that seemed to die down with all the Wu flu lockdowns, which isn't surprising. But despite the whole Wu flu stuff, I guess that's blown over for them as far as they're concerned, and certainly, being under China's wing when China's trying to promote the idea that the virus has passed for them too. Hong Kong being locked down for that reason isn't it's not so justifiable, at least not like it is here. And so people, I guess, feel free to get out and make noise in the streets again. And so what is it over this time? Before, it was over this extradition law that which ended up getting pulled, but it was basically saying that folks from Hong Kong could get extradited to mainland China. That was the fear. So that someone, let's say, spoke out against the Beijing government, and they were indicted on sedition in China proper, they could be extradited from Hong Kong into regular old China and be prosecuted and sent to the gulag. But eventually the protesters were able to put enough pressure on the Hong Kong government, not the Beijing government, to withdraw that bill, because of course that was a bill that was being passed through the Hong Kong legislature. Well, now Beijing said that whole Hong Kong legislature, they seem to be pretty feckless and subject to protests. So we in Beijing will pass our own law, of course, a different law. It's not an extradition law. It's something potentially far worse, which is just passing a law that imposes, the fear is Chinese mainland law on Hong Kong. And so this, it's not a full-blown law yet. It hasn't gone through all the processes, but the resolution says that they're going to outlaw secession and sedition. And basically that means anyone who's speaking out against the government of China and doesn't want to be a part of China. And so that would outlaw this entire protest movement, since that's kind of what they want. They are, a lot of them want secession, not all of them, but all of them certainly are seditious in that they're not fond of the Chinese government. They want to replace the Chinese administration with something a little more friendly in their eyes. So those are the two big things that I see as being a problem. Now, another point in there that they had is that they're outlawing essentially foreign intervention in Hong Kong affairs. And of course terrorism, but I would imagine terrorism, was already illegal. So what is this foreign intervention stuff they're talking about? Are they talking about Russia buying Facebook ads? Is that what they mean by foreign intervention? No, not really. What the Chinese are referring to is something that's kind of been ongoing, which is, the U.S. Constantly meddling in the Hong Kong issue, which, again, even though I agree with I agree with the U.S.'s sentiment in this case, I don't think that they're helping. I think that they are, they're making it seem like all of these folks in Hong Kong who are critical of China are just traitors to their country. Essentially, that they are foreign agents trying to subvert their society, and that has the potential to trigger a nationalist backlash against anyone in Hong Kong who criticizes the Beijing government. In other words, instead of seeming like an independence movement, it seems more like, okay, we don't want to be under China's wing, we want to be under the U.S.'s wing. We just want a different overlord. And that is the kind of thing that it's not as easy to sell. Because it seems like the same old thing is what it sounds like. Okay, so you still want us to be dominated, you just want us to be dominated by the guys who are paying you. That makes a lot of sense. And of course then, it's very easy for the Chinese government to justify cracking down on these folks, because they're saying, look at this, these are just foreign agents looking to try and conquer some of our territory. We're protecting our people, the folks in Hong Kong, from American domination. That's how they can spin this. And that's exactly how they have been spinning this. And the U.S., has been doing both overt and covert things, to try and egg things on. Of course, they have their, what was it, the Hong Kong Democracy Act or something like that, to where they essentially are going to create a report every year, the State Department is, on how well China's doing with Hong Kong. And if the State Department says that China's being a bad boy, well, then they're going to sanction Hong Kong. Now, how does that help people in Hong Kong? If you're someone who works in Hong Kong and you deal with, trade in the U.S., and you get sanctioned, is that going to make you like the U.S. more? Or is that going to make you, resent them? I mean, when will the U.S. ever learn? These countries that they sanction, the populations never exactly become fond of them. The folks in Venezuela are not more pro-America now than they were before Venezuela got sanctioned. The same is true in Iran. You just make all these people feel attacked because, you're not sanctioning the government. You are sanctioning the people. But that hasn't happened yet, so we'll have to wait and see. The U.S. just passed this law saying, hey, we will sanction Hong Kong if things don't go our way. But in addition to that, apparently some of the more public leaders of this Hong Kong protest movement have, dozens of pictures of them with, high-level U.S. officials. John Bolton, the regime changer in chief, Mike Pompeo, I think they've got pictures with all sorts of folks. They went to, apparently, Jeremy Wong, I think his name is, was a kid who spent quite a bit of time in Washington. He's pretty young. I think he's around my age. And, I kind of feel bad for him. I think that it might have been some naivete to go to Washington and think that they were going to help him. Because really all he did was paint a target on his back and make himself look like, a CIA agent. And then, of course, we have the de facto CIA, the NED, National Endowment for Democracy, which is it's a CIA cutout. They essentially do what the CIA would want or used to do, and is run by CIA people, but they are not technically a part of the CIA. They're an NGO, and they are actively involved in Hong Kong. And then you have all these incidents of Hong Kong protesters, sort of small groups, waving American flags and saying how much we love America. Could you imagine if Southern secessionists in America, or Puerto Rican, secessionists, were waving Chinese flags and saying how much we love China because they support our secession movement? I mean, do you think that would trigger a positive or a negative backlash, from America and from the government? I'm pretty certain that the government would not be fond of that. In fact, I think our government would probably treat people in a similar way that the Chinese would like to treat these folks in Hong Kong. And so, I guess with all that said, I'm quite concerned about the situation going on in Hong Kong. It does not seem to be the kind of place that you're going to want to stay anywhere long term. It seems like the folks there, their best course of action at this point is to get out. At least that's what I would do. But it's very difficult to tell someone that they should abandon their home, especially when there's, again, such a large swath of the population that clearly doesn't want this. But I just haven't seen things getting any better. I think that what it's going to take is a weakening of the Beijing government for other reasons. It would be a weakening of China that will eventually force them to loosen their grip on Hong Kong, but I don't think that they're going to do it just simply because of these protests. I think that dominating Hong Kong is something that's very high on Beijing's priority list, and so therefore, unless they are faced with extreme scarcity and weakness, I don't think that they are going to compromise. And so with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.